So, in the realm of careers that were shorter than they otherwise probably should have been, today I present to you Keith Primeau, who was the number 3 draft pick in 1990. This is the third careers that were probably too short video that I've done so far in this playlist. And Keith Primeau did have a relatively long history, but it was definitely shorter than it probably should have been. And it felt like he retired before his time. So he comes into the league as a pretty strong top pick out of what was an amazing draft. Remember, Yager goes 5th that year, and all 4 guys that went ahead of him were pretty good players as well. So the 1990 draft, not too shabby. Keith Primeau, though the first year in Detroit, there were a lot of rumors about whether or not he was actually ready. And a lot of discussions of whether or not Detroit made a mistake bringing him into the league. 58 games played, 3 goals, 12 assists, 15 points. And so the question is one of, so what are they thinking here? What are they doing? Now, the following season, he plays 35 games, 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points. He scores at a higher rate than in year 1. But again, the conversation's still one of, well, he only has 9 goals through the first 2 years. The word bust will get thrown around here and there when it comes to Keith Primeau because people are impatient. We need this guy to develop now. Is he a superstar now? How about now? And so going into year 3, there's some pressure. Year 3, he finally plays close to a full season, 73 games, 15 goals, 17 assists, and 32 points. So things are going well. He has a full season, approximately, and he scores 32 points. He stays at about the same rate he'd been the year before. And you start to think, all right, is that where he's settled in? No. Year 4, 93-94, 78 games played, 31 goals, 42 assists, 73 points. That power forward they drafted finally arrives. Doesn't lose any of the sandpaper out of his game, and he shows the offense. He shows the ability to be a top 2 center, and things look like they're going to really work out for him in Detroit. And at some point, Detroit's going to win a Stanley Cup. But when Detroit does win that Stanley Cup, he won't end up being there. And the trade with him actually ends up being part of the reason that Detroit gets over the hump. Now, they have a lockout-shortened season in 94-95, 45 games played, 15 goals, 27 assists, 42 points. So again, almost a full season for him, about a point a game. Scoring at roughly a 30-goal pace, not too shabby. 95-96, 74 games played, 27 goals, 25 assists, 52 points. Now, that summer, Detroit brings in, or signs Larionov. And Primeau, he wants to get paid. So he sits out. And he's basically like, no, I want to get paid. Now, in Hartford, there's a disgruntled player named Brendan Shanahan who kind of wants out of Hartford. And Primeau probably wouldn't mind being out of Detroit. So you sit 2 GMs down across from each other and they say, I've got a guy that doesn't really want to play here. I got a guy who really doesn't want to play here either. Hey, I know. We can swap problems. Sure. Sometimes it works. Now, in this case, Hartford gets Primeau. They also get Paul Coffey and a first-round pick. And going to Detroit, Brendan Shanahan and Brian Glynn. Who was that first-round pick? It's not important. What's important is Brendan Shanahan going to Detroit, and he would be a big part of a Stanley Cup winner in 1997. Now, in Hartford, the last year in Hartford, Primeau plays 75 games, 26 goals, 25 assists, 51 points. Almost an identical stat line for that last year in Hartford. The team moves to Carolina, and his stats actually get better in Carolina. 81 games played, 26 goals, 37 assists, 63 points, and he finishes 8th in the voting for the Selke. So he's seen as a good two-way center, pretty good forward. He's still putting up penalty minutes. He's still a physical presence out there. And along this way, he is garnering the occasional concussion. And he admits that after. That he has 4 documented concussions in his career, but having played since the age of 5, he's pretty sure he had others. Where he'd get his bell rung, and he realized after he stopped playing, that was probably a concussion, and I just played through it. And that was what you did. And being roughly the same age as Primeau, I can agree that you would see a kid get hurt in sports, and it was just, get up, shake it off, and they'd be all wobbly, and you kind of laugh, they're fine. You wouldn't think anything of it, and I think back now, and I think, that could have been, not a major concussion, but concussions weren't considered to be major hurts because you don't see it physically on the outside. So 98-99, his last year in Carolina, 78 games, 30 goals, 32 assists, 62 points. He plays in the All-Star game. But much like he had in Detroit not long before that, he decides to tell Carolina, all right, I'm holding out. So he holds out on Carolina. Carolina sours on this and decides, okay, well, we're going to have to make a change here. And so Carolina makes a deal that I think sets up Carolina for a Stanley Cup in 2006. So Keith Primeau inadvertently brings Stanley Cups to both Detroit and Carolina. He goes to Philadelphia on January 23rd of 2000. He's traded with a 5th-round pick for Rod Brind'Amour, Jean-Marc Pelletier, and a 2nd-round pick. So it's a really solid trade for Carolina. It's one you look back with Philadelphia and you go, so what were you thinking? And honestly, Philadelphia's answer would be, we were thinking we were getting a big, strong center. We already had Lindros, big, strong center, and things were going to be great. But of course, Lindros' time in Philadelphia was coming to an end. 23 games played by Primeau that year after the trade, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points. So again, if he played the full season in Philadelphia, who knows? So the following year, he has the benefit of having a full training camp with the Flyers, and things look good out of the gate. 71 games, 34 goals, 39 assists, 73 points. You know when a guy puts on a jersey, and you see them wearing that jersey, and you think that jersey suits him? The Flyers jersey suited Primeau. He just looked like a Flyer. Just one of those things where every now and then you'll see a guy wear a Bruins jersey, and you go, yeah, he looks like a Bruin. And for me, Primeau, yeah, he looked like a Flyer. So 2000-2001 was a great season. 01-02, 75 games, 19 goals, 29 assists, 48 points. So the offense dials back dramatically that second full season with Philadelphia. But still, 75 games. He plays almost every game during the season. 2002-2003, 80 games played, so close to a full season. It's one of only 2 times in his career he plays 80 games or more. 19 goals, 27 assists, 46 points. So the offense is slowing down. But again, he's a good defensive forward, so it's okay. 2003-2004, he only plays 54 games, 7 goals, 15 assists, 22 points. He was 6th in Selke voting that year. So his defensive game was picking it up, and there were people noticing it. He's also in the All-Star game that year as well. So the 04-05 season doesn't exist, wiped out thanks to a lockout. So we go to 05-06, and he gets off to a very strong start. The best start he's had since 2000-2001. 9 games, 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points. He suffers a concussion in a game against Montreal. He would never take to the ice again. He ended up retiring in September 14th of 2006. Once he suffers this concussion, and he's missed a significant part of that 05-06 season, I think as hockey fans we knew his time was done. But it didn't make it easier for Flyers fans to see that happen. Because keep in mind, again, Lindros would move on, and the Flyers were kind of in flux. And Primeau, it was always a situation where Primeau looked like a guy you'd build a team around. Because he's big, he's strong, he's centered down the middle. And even if he's not producing the 30, 35 goals or anything in that region, he can still do all the things defensively you want. He's a guy you want in your locker room. He's a guy you want on the ice. And of course, he scores one of the most famous goals in history as well, back in 2000, right here against the Pittsburgh Penguins, where in a 5th overtime, at 92 minutes and 1 second of overtime, so at 152 minutes and 1 second into the game, he scores the 5th overtime goal. In the 5th overtime is what I mean, not the 5th overtime. In the 5th overtime of the game, he scores the goal. So he scores the goal in that game, and they would end up winning that series in 6. So one of the most famous goals in history, and I put up here, it was May 4th/5th, because the game started on the 4th, and it ended on the 5th. So it went past the midnight hour, and Primeau scores the game winner. In playoffs, he played a grand total of 128 games, 18 goals, including that 5th overtime game winner, 39 assists, 57 points. And again, the odd thing is he played 909 games, 266 goals, 353 assists, 619 points, and he had 1,541 penalty minutes. A lot of penalty minutes for him because, physical player, he could fight if he needed to. And yet the 4 concussions, and we'll likely never know just how many he actually suffered in his career. Keith Primeau, There were certainly those who didn't necessarily like him a whole lot, mostly fans for other teams. There may be a fan or two in Carolina or in Detroit that didn't like how he made his exit when he did. But it was a career that was shortened due to injury. And that major concussion. One thing in an interview, Keith Primeau said, he used to watch big hits in a game and he would cheer those big hits, and that was great and that was an awesome moment. And watching hockey games now, some of those exact same big hits make him kind of wince a little bit and kind of cringe a little bit because he realizes what kind of injury you can have from some of those big hits in the game. But there you go. Career of Keith Primeau. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.